The formation of the United States government was a process marked by experimentation and evolution. The first governing document of the United States, the Articles of Confederation, was ratified in 1781 during the Revolutionary War. It served as the nation's foundational framework, but proved insufficient in addressing the complexities of governing a growing and diverse nation. Recognizing its limitations, the Founding Fathers drafted the U.S. Constitution in 1787, which was ratified in 1789, creating a more robust and adaptable system of government. Understanding the major differences between these two documents sheds light on how the United States transitioned from a loose confederation of states to a unified federal republic. Under the Articles of Confederation, the national government was intentionally designed to be weak, reflecting the colonies' fear of centralized authority following their struggle against British rule. The Articles created a unicameral legislature called the Confederation Congress, where each state had one vote regardless of population size. There was no separate executive branch to enforce laws and no national judiciary to resolve disputes between states. This structure severely limited the federal government's ability to implement and enforce policies effectively. In contrast, the U.S. Constitution established a stronger federal government with a clear separation of powers among three distinct branches: the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. The legislative branch, or Congress, was divided into two chambers: the House of Representatives, with representation based on state population, and the Senate, with equal representation for each state. This bicameral system balanced the interests of both populous and smaller states. Additionally, the Constitution created the office of the President to execute and enforce laws, and an independent federal judiciary, headed by the Supreme Court, to interpret laws and resolve disputes. One of the most significant weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation was the federal government's inability to levy taxes. Under the Articles, Congress could request funds from the states but had no authority to compel payment. This led to severe financial instability as the government could not raise revenue to pay debts, fund the military, or support national projects. The U.S. Constitution addressed this flaw by granting Congress the explicit power to levy and collect taxes, duties, and tariffs, providing the federal government with a reliable source of income to sustain its operations. The Articles of Confederation also lacked the power to regulate interstate and international commerce. Each state maintained its own trade policies, leading to economic disarray, trade barriers, and competition among states. This fragmented system hindered the nation's economic growth and created tensions between states. The Constitution resolved this issue by granting Congress the ability to regulate both interstate and international commerce, fostering a unified national market and promoting economic stability. The Articles of Confederation required unanimous consent from all 13 states to amend the document, making it nearly impossible to correct its shortcomings. This rigidity hampered the government's ability to adapt to changing circumstances and address pressing national issues. In contrast, the Constitution established a more practical amendment process. Amendments could be proposed by a two-thirds majority in both houses of Congress or by a national convention called by two-thirds of state legislatures. Ratification required approval from three-fourths of the states, striking a balance between flexibility and stability. Another critical difference was the handling of military affairs. Under the Articles, the federal government could not maintain a standing army and had to rely on state militias for defense. This decentralized approach left the nation vulnerable to internal uprising and external threats. The Constitution empowered the federal government to raise and maintain armed forces, ensuring a unified and effective national defense. The president was designated as the commander-in-chief of the military, providing centralized leadership in times of conflict. Dispute resolution between states was another area where the Articles fell short. Without a national judiciary, conflicts between states over borders, trade, or legal matters were difficult to resolve, often leading to prolonged disagreements and tensions. The Constitution remedied this by establishing a federal court system, with the Supreme Court serving as the highest authority in legal disputes. This ensured that interstate conflicts could be resolved fairly and consistently. The enforcement of laws was weak under the Articles because there was no executive branch to implement or enforce congressional decisions. States could choose to ignore federal laws and directives, undermining national cohesion. The Constitution created the executive branch, led by the president, to enforce federal laws and ensure that government policies were carried out effectively across all states. This centralized enforcement mechanism strengthened the rule of law and national unity. Representation and voting were also points of contention under the Articles. Each state had a single vote in Congress, regardless of population and economic contribution. This system disadvantaged larger states and created imbalances in representation. The Constitution introduced a bicameral legislature that balanced representation. The House of Representatives was based on population, giving larger states more influence, while the Senate provided equal representation for all states. Additionally, the Articles of Confederation did not grant the federal government authority over foreign policy beyond making treaties and alliances. States could independently negotiate with foreign powers, leading to inconsistent foreign relations. The Constitution centralized foreign policy under the executive branch, with the president responsible for negotiating treaties, subject to Senate approval, and representing the nation in international affairs. This change ensured a unified and coherent foreign policy. Public unrest, such as Shays' Rebellion in 1786, highlighted the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. The federal government's inability to respond effectively to such uprising exposed its lack of authority and resources. The Constitution's stronger federal structure allowed the government to respond swiftly to internal threats and maintain order, preserving national stability. In summary, the transition from the Articles of Confederation to the U.S. Constitution marked a fundamental shift in the structure and powers of the American government. The Constitution addressed the critical flaws of the Articles by creating a stronger, more flexible federal system with separate branches of government, the ability to levy taxes, regulate commerce, maintain a military, and enforce its laws. These changes provided a foundation for a stable and prosperous nation capable of adapting to future changes. The Constitution not only corrected the weaknesses of the Articles, but also established enduring principles of governance that continue to guide the United States today.